Hi everyone, thanks for turning up. So I'm Dora Nikols. I run a PR agency called Social Mission, and we're all about helping companies find and communicate their social purpose. So today I'll be talking about how you can stand out and stand for something. Just want to get an idea of who's in the room. Do you all have your own business? Mainly own business, yeah. So this will really help you in terms of finding a way to really stand out amongst your competitors. And I'll also be sharing some case studies and a framework that we use that would hopefully help you on your own journey. Cool. I don't know where I'm supposed to point this. Oh, okay. I want to start by talking about Anita Roddick from the Body Shop. Now, I refer to her a lot because she was one of the first social purpose businesses, and she's created a framework for success in terms of how to run a business that is about promoting your values. Now, she was quite vocal and visible, and she incorporated her values into her business. And one of the key values was that she was against animal testing, which was a big thing in the beauty industry. And it also helped her to really stand out. So in terms of the five, success concepts that she has was, firstly, she found her why she was in business, and what difference she wanted to make, and that was to stop animal testing. She was also very vocal and visible, and she also worked with her staff and her community to educate them, so they became ambassadors for her brand. And she also used publicity. So she started in 1976 in the UK, and she grew to become quite successful in 2007, just before she passed away. She sold the Body Shop to L'Oreal for $1.1 billion. So it's this, so we can really learn a lot from Anita Roddick and how she ran her business. Ooh. Okay, this is our purpose. PR for good, and it's all about taking an inside-out approach. So this is our purpose. We found that a lot of businesses were promoting what they were doing, or PR agencies were promoting what companies were doing, but not really conscious if they were doing good internally. So we take an inside-out approach. And we use this methodology, stand for something, which I want to share with you today, and hopefully it'll be valuable for your own journey. So if you're a startup, or if you're any business and you're looking to find your social purpose, the first thing is to assess where you are and to identify what your why is, what you really care about, what problem you want to solve. From there, you would align to a cause or a charity to help with the education and profile. From there, you'll focus on amplifying your message through social media and publicity, and also analysing your journey. It's really important, if you're doing good, to not only let your community know that you're supporting a particular cause, but share the journey and the impact that you're having to build the credibility. Okay, so if we look at today's market, it's all about the conscious consumer. So the market's full of consumer activists, and they're really on alert, looking at companies that aren't doing well in the community. So if you're not looking at your social and environmental stance, then there's a really big chance that you could damage your brand, which would be a really huge PR disaster. So I've got the first image there is shame on Uber. This is from a big social media campaign that went viral called Delete Uber. And that was a result of Donald Trump in 2017. He put a ban to allow any immigrants, particularly Muslims, into the country. So taxi companies boycotted or they protested and they refused to pick people up from the airport. But Uber was quite opportunistic. They went and picked people up anyway, and this created that sort of outrage. And there was the Delete Google hashtag that went global, and as a result 200,000 people deleted the app, and they went to Lyft, their competitor. So really important that you stand for something and do the right thing. Also, marketing has shifted. It's not about just promoting your product or your service. It's also about inspiring people and sharing your story, why you do what you do, and getting them involved. In the presentation, I will talk a little bit about Tom's Shoes. Not sure if you're aware of them, but Tom's Shoes, they started or the founders from the US. They're kind of like a social enterprise. They're a one-for-one business model. So they've got One Day Without Shoes, which is a global campaign. If you hashtag yourself not wearing shoes, they donate a pair of shoes to a child in need. So that forms their marketing strategy. So if you're looking at marketing, think about communicating what your cause, your why, and what you care about. Also, consumers have become quite conscious. They're looking at companies to do the right thing. Australia's now I think it's the third largest vegan population, and we're also quite vigilant in plastic straws campaigns. So consumers are really looking at that. So if you're designing products or if you have an existing company, just looking at all those things. That's why the assess stage is so important, just looking at where you are socially and environmentally, and also what you care about, and making sure you're communicating that. Okay. Sorry, keep going the wrong direction. So we now live in a society where people demand transparency, authenticity, meaning, and purpose. And that just builds on how the market has changed. What's driving this is, I guess, social media. It's so busy, there's so much traffic. We were in the digital revolution, but now we're in the purpose revolution, where people are using brands with purpose to make their buying decisions. This is the way companies stand out, and it also helps people choose brands that reflect their values. So very important in today's market. And these are some more recent stats that nearly 2 in 3 people, they switch, avoid, or boycott a brand based on its stand on social issues. Also, which is very important for everyone, is 65% will not buy a brand because it stayed quiet on an issue it was obliged to address. So that's really important. The first image there is the straw no more. So if you're in a company that uses straws and you're staying silent, not doing anything about it, then that's something that's quite topical, and people want to know what your stance is. So whether it's you make a commitment to phase out straws, for example, or you make the switch. But staying silent would be quite damaging from a PR perspective, that you just don't care. And these are some more stats where 69% of global consumers, they believe the CEO or the founder is really vital in being vocal to talk about what they care about, to build trust. It's really important. That's an image of Alan Joyce from Qantas. And Qantas has become quite, I guess, successful in terms of their market share, because Alan Joyce, who is a gay man as well, so he's got the credibility, but he stood up for gay rights. And because of that, he won a lot of cred for the airline, and it paid in terms of the morale he created and also the market share, and consumers really aligning to the values of the brand. So really important. 58% of Australians are more likely to be loyal to your brand if you talk about what you care about, and 92% will have a more positive image, which again, really important from the PR value. And global stats have also found that 89% would switch brands. If they were to choose between two brands and one was doing good, they will more likely go for the one that's doing good. So what is social purpose? So social purpose, if you think about it for yourself or your brand, is what legacy you want to leave behind. And the official meaning is a social purpose brand is one whose enduring reason for being is to create a better world. It's an engine for good, and it's creating social benefits in the way it conducts business. And that was highlighted in the example in the beginning with Anita Roddick from The Body Shop. She was really an engine for good and really changing the business model of a traditionally not so good industry, which is the beauty industry. So there's 4 types of businesses, or I would say 5 now, I have to add that in. But the first one is for-profit, which is traditional, just making money. And then we have CSR, which stands for corporate social responsibility. And that's what a lot of big corporates do. They usually conduct business as normal, and then they support a charity on the side, but that no longer works. Social purpose business is when you incorporate doing good within your company, within its DNA, and you communicate it. Then you have the not-for-profit. The 5th one that I need to add is a social enterprise, which is 100% of profits. So there's that option, but the social purpose business is, I guess, your ideal if you're looking to keep your profits, do good, and grow your brand. So most of you, I'm assuming, hoping, know Simon Sinek. He's quite famous now. His Find Your Why clip on YouTube, I think it's reached 150 million views or more. And he's quite vocal about companies finding their why. And he's developed the golden circle. That's a result of looking at some of the most successful companies, including Apple, and why they succeeded. And he found it's because Apple, for example, shared their why. They didn't talk about their what or their how, their USP, their product or features. No one really cared how big the gig is or the technical features of the computer. Their why was to change the status quo and to design a beautiful computer, which they did, and to think different. And that really resonated with people. If we look at the other circle, that represents your brain. So from a scientific perspective, your why taps into the limbic brain part of your brain, which is responsible for building trust and memory. It also, when it hears a message, it resonates emotionally, and that's how consumers become loyal and build trust. If you just talk about why and what of your product, then you're talking to the neocortex part of the brain, which is the analytical part of the brain. That's where your customers, they're going to compare you with someone else, and the brain is going to be thinking of pros and cons. So we want to directly engage their heart, and you do that through the why. So I've brought the Stand for Something framework up again, and I've brought it up for you to have a think about where you are on your journey. So maybe if you have your phone, put a note in or a piece of paper, or just think about some questions that I'm going to ask. So the first one is, what is your why? What legacy do you want to leave behind? So maybe just have a think. Maybe take some moments to write that down, or take a a photo and just think about what your why is and what difference you want to make in the world. That's where everything starts, and that's going to be the core of your messaging. It's going to drive your brand, and it's also going to drive your business, the values that you have. It's going to be everything. It's going to be an extension of who you are as a person, so you're personalising your brand. So really important that you sit and you reflect on what your why is and what you're really doing by building a business, or even if you're working in a business. I guess we really all just want to live in a world that's doing good. So if you can do some good and make money, then that's optimum. I want to share a story of Tom's why. So Tom's Shoes, as I mentioned, it's a global brand. That's Blake McCoskey. He created Tom's, and his why was to put shoes on the feet of impoverished children's feet. He was on the TV show The Amazing Race, and he travelled through Argentina with his sister, and he was actually quite saddened to see that a lot of the children in the villages didn't have shoes, and that's where he came up with the idea, being an entrepreneur, how can I build a business that puts shoes on children's feet? And that became his why. So with such a powerful why, even though he didn't have any experience with the shoe industry, that why was so powerful that he succeeded. So now he has a one-for-one business model. Each time you buy a pair of shoes, a pair is donated to a child in need. He's now, I think he started in 2006. So he's now worth, I think that's half the business, $625 million. He's donated over 60 million pairs of shoes, and he's also expanded the brand. So he has sunglasses and a host of other brands. So with the glasses, they fix people's eyes in third world countries. So he's really been able to grow, and that's all because of his social purpose. And like Anita Roddick, that values that he had created a lot of free publicity, which is what you want to stand out. But again, it has to be meaningful. You really have to care about what you're doing. So another question for you to think about is, what is your vision? What will the world look like once you fulfill your purpose? For Blake McCoskey, it was to ensure that children had shoes on their feet, because it causes a lot of health issues for the children. And I guess in the world we live in, that's just not right. So that was his vision. Anita Roddick was to stop animal testing, and she has managed to do it in the European Union. And the Body Shop is still campaigning. They've got a campaign now called Forever Against Animal Testing. They've got 8 million signatures on their petition, and they're continuing the vision that Anita Roddick left. So something to think about for your own business, and I guess it ties into your legacy and what you want to create. And these are just some brands that are quite successful, and they all have their values and their social purpose at their core. The first one there is Airbnb, and theirs is to make people feel like they belong anywhere. They did, I think it was in 2014, they did a survey with all their guests who stay in their properties, and they all said they all want to feel like they belong when they visit a country. So that became their purpose, and it resonates throughout the whole business. In the States, again in 2017, when Donald Trump didn't want any immigrants in America, Airbnb offered immigrants Airbnb properties free for the month, so they can stay, just to show people that you belong anywhere and everyone is welcome. They also had a campaign a couple of years ago with the Yes campaign, and it was all about saying, yes, you belong. So they're quite vocal in that message. The CEO is quite vocal, and it's filtered throughout the whole brand. Some other ones is Dove. They're all about empowerment for women, and it's not showing the typical beautiful thin model. It's showing women of all sizes can be beautiful, and that's reflected in their business and in their PR and marketing. And we've got a few others, which I will go through a little bit later, but that's, I guess, a snapshot of some of the brands, what they do and what they believe in. So another question for you. What cause brings your values to life? So if you can think about what cause you care about, what difference you want to make, it's really important to start thinking about what cause partner, what charity you can align with. A lot of brands that I speak to, they support causes ad hoc, and there's no real strategy or meaning. So you really want to make sure that it reflects your values. And if it's your social purpose, go partner with someone, because they're going to help you with the education of that cause and with the messages that you promote. And these are some questions that you can ask when it comes time to finding the right charity partner. You really have to make sure that it fits into your values. It supports your business goals. Customers and staff really care about it. A big reason why the Body Shop was so successful is a lot of the customers were against animal testing, so that really resonated with the audience. So choose something that really resonates. Make sure your competitors don't own it and you're not just one of many. So it doesn't matter if you go small with your cause, make sure that it's aligned and people care about it. It relates to your core products. So I guess it's not random. With the Body Shop and animal testing, Anita Roddick aligns with a lot of, or did, still does, aligns with a lot of environmental and animal welfare groups. It needs to support your business goals. And you need to stick to it long term. Whatever cause partner you choose, stick with it for a long time, because that way you can talk about the impact that you're having. And there's also more credibility if you align to one cause. And you also want to make sure that it's a big enough problem that it resonates with people. They know what it is. They also care about the issue. And it's something that they want a solution to. And it's a concern in the community. So that's some things to think about when you're looking at who to partner with. And then once you find your cause, it's looking at your company, the way you position and market yourself and how you run your business, and ensuring that those values and that cause is integrated throughout the whole organisation. So if you're doing any sort of marketing, talk about what you're doing. Have a percentage of sales on your pack or through your messaging to really show your commitment, and that's a good way of raising funds for your cause. With your social media, PR, marketing, talking about the issue. Donating funds, that could be donation of sales or any other way you want to make a donation. Also looking at it's really important to, when you're supporting a cause, to also look at your business practices. Just ensure that you are socially, environmentally conscious with the suppliers that you use, the supply chain, just being really mindful of that. And corporate sponsorship, if you can sponsor any sort of events. It's also really critical in the centre, I guess that represents the core of your business, making sure that you're communicating your social purpose to your staff, because they're your brand ambassadors and it builds the culture, and they're engaged. And your CEO or founder is quite vocal and visible, and the cause is something that they care about. This, not sure if you're familiar with Yubi, they're quite big in the States. They've recently launched in Australia. They came about when the founder was looking for stationery for his daughters, and they wanted something fun and cool. And when he was doing his research, he discovered that teachers pay $500 out of their own money to buy stationery because kids can't afford it. So he started UBI, and that has a similar one-for-one business model. Each time you buy UBI stationery, a pack is donated to schools in need. And they've partnered with the right cause. Here in Australia, they've partnered with the Smith family. They're all about addressing education for kids, and they help UBI identify schools that have the most need. And then they use their celebrity ambassador, can't remember his name, from The Bachelor, and he goes and donates, which is really good, I guess, for their brand building and their PR. They get a lot of coverage for that, and they're also doing good and growing the brand at the same time. So I encourage you to think about your story. What is, or I guess, what's the reason why you started your business? And when people ask you, what do you do, why you started this business, why you work for this business, you want to have a story behind it. For Blake McCoskey, it was when he was on The Amazing Race. He went through Argentina and he saw kids needed shoes. So really thinking about what that is. What drove you to start your business, or what was the problem? Or if you work for a business, speaking to the founders and identifying that story, because you'll need that story for your PR and all your marketing. And again, focusing on Tom's with their story, what really drove the success of Tom's Shoes, particularly in the States, was the story. The story that each time you buy a pair is donated to a child in need. Now, he was able to be stocked in one of the biggest retail outlets in the States, and he was able to get the attention of the shoe buyer. Usually the shoe buyer sees hundreds, if not thousands, pairs of shoes where people want their shoes stocked in her store. But as soon as she found out about Tom's story, they were instantly stocked. And he also got a feature in Vogue magazine, which then created this global sensation. So if you're not familiar of Blake McCoskey, do a Google search, and the internet will blow up with his story. So this is important, again, going to the science because of the chemicals it releases in the brain. You don't want to just talk about your features and benefits. You want to talk about your story, because again, it actually does release a chemical in your brain. These are the 3 different chemicals, but essentially what they do is they help people to remember your story, and you want them to remember. You want them to have empathy, and that's why these stories, the why and your social purpose is so important, because on a scientific level, it's what gets people engaged. So if we were to talk about our what or our how, our features and benefits, that's the part of the brain that lights up. That's the logical part. But if we were to talk about our story, the whole brain lights up. And this is where we emotionally connect and we remember, and it's through the stories and your why. So really important to share that. Now this is another example that I'd like to share. Thank You Water with Daniel Flynn. His is a social enterprise, so 100% of profits go to building safe water and sanitation in third world countries. But he had a really powerful story and a really powerful why. He was a student, 19-year-old student. He discovered 900,000 people don't have access to clean water, and that sparked him to start Thank You Water. He had no experience again in business, being so young, or the industry, but it was that why, that messaging, that he was able to get a lot of people on board. He also has been able to get a lot of traction with his followers, his tribe. When it was time for him to be stocked in 7-Eleven, he went to Facebook to all his followers and he asked for their support. So about, I think it was 2 weeks before he was due to meet with 7-Eleven, there was a big social media campaign where all his followers and supporters were posting videos why 7-Eleven should stock their water, which worked. And then they went on to do the same to Coles. And that's a flag that they were flying over the head office to encourage Coles to stock their brand. That made the national news, and good news, they stocked. Thank you. Today they got 55 products and they're doing amazingly well. And this is water. It's because of the social purpose and the story that they had. Another great brand, Ben & Jerry's. This was, I guess, another early social purpose business, set up same sort of time as Anita Roddick, the two founders from Vermont. And the whole business was based on their values. And they talk a lot about climate justice. In Australia, a couple of years ago, they had a campaign, and it was Fight for the Reef campaign, and that created a lot of interest. They had this camper van travelling through the east coast of Australia, and it was raising awareness for the Great Barrier Reef, and they were collecting signatures for their petition, so there's no mining or any sort of development on the reef, and that actually got a lot of support. What was really interesting is Alexander White, he's, I think, the minister or someone in Queensland, and he was really upset with Ben & Jerry's. He asked his community to boycott Ben & Jerry's because he was affecting tourism by getting people not to develop on Ben & Jerry's. But there was a poll that ran in the local paper, and 80% of consumers, they didn't support his views, but also they said 80% said they're more likely to buy the brand because of their campaigning. Another good one, Zambrero, Mexican chain, started by Sam Prince. He's an Aussie guy from Sri Lanka, and he started Zambrero, which is plate for plate. So again, each time you buy a burrito, one is donated to a child in need. Now, he has grown exceptionally. He started, again, I think same time as Tom's. He's now worth $294 million. He's got 190 restaurants throughout Australia. He's just donated 30 million meals, and he's quite active in his community. He talks about the issue a lot. He also has one day a year, I think it's in October, meal packing day, and that's a good marketing tool for him to get his message out about what he's about. Tom's, who I've spoken about, and they've got their 1-for-1 campaign and their 1 day without shoes, and that goes quite global, and it gets a lot of traction on social media and really helps the brand keep growing and keep building the community that it has and the loyalty. So again, I've got some questions here in terms of where you are. When you're thinking about your values, your why, your story, look at your PR and what you're doing with that, or when you get to that stage, wherever you are in your journey, and making sure that you're sharing your values and the founder, CEO is vocal. Also ensuring that if you're talking to the media or doing any interviews or talking about your brand through your social media, talking about that journey and where you are, who you're supporting, why you're supporting them, what your story is, and how you're tracking with that. Also, look at your brand perception. How are you currently perceived in the market? Or if you're new, have a look at who your customers are, what they care about, and find a cause that aligns to their values and what you care about. Also have a look at your business again in terms of how socially, environmentally conscious you are, what any risks there are, and see if you can mitigate them in any way. And it's really important when you're starting your business or wherever you are in your journey, is to ensure that your staff are really engaged and they know what you stand for, because you're also going to attract good talent. You'll attract investors because they know the value of being socially purposed, and also ensuring that your customers know what you stand for. And this is, I guess, some ways from a PR perspective to share your story. Sending out, if you're quite new, is sending out a media release to your local media, trade media. Let them know what you're doing, what you're trying to achieve. Also looking at your social media to ensure that you're not only talking about your brand and product, but also what you care about. Looking at any public speaking to talk about what you care about and what you're trying to achieve. Writing articles, entering awards, any sort of campaigns like the one that I've shared with the other brands. And also it's important just to analyse, just to measure where you are in terms of, do your customers really care about this? What sort of traction are you getting? What sort of meaningful difference are you creating? Always important to have a look at that, track it, measure it, and report on it. So key takeaways. What I want to leave you with is to ensure that you find your social purpose by going through maybe some of the steps, using some of the case studies for inspiration. So when it comes to what you care about and what cause, maybe think about what makes you angry, what difference you want to make. Again, with Anita Roddick, it was animal testing. So that kind of forms your social purpose. If you're partnering with a cause, make sure that it's long-term. Engage your tribe, so that's with your customers and your staff. Your founder, to be vocal and visible, talking about the values of the business. If not externally in the media, at least internally to staff and anyone else who's involved, any other stakeholders in the business. Create any sort of awareness and use PR to tell your story. And that's me. That's all. Thank you.
Were there any questions?
Thanks, Dora. By the way, I'm president of Bike Sydney. Our purpose is to just make it easy for everyone to ride a bike for some of their local trips, for example. Not for profit, we struggle with connecting into patrons. So my question goes to, I guess from your insight, if I've got this right, that you help people do this, what are some of the key insights, maybe the mistakes, tips that people such as me, when appealing to patrons, good causes, what are they not getting quite right?
I guess it's important, if you are reaching out to a cause, just making sure that it aligns to your values, but making sure that they're also big enough to support you in terms of the reporting, making sure that they can do that, but also that they have a big database of people, because what you want to do is cross-promote. You want to use their database to engage their audience. So you really want to make sure that they're big enough and they get what you do and they're quite passionate about it and they're going to support you. So sometimes it might not be the big ones, because a lot of big companies compete for that space and it can be quite pricey. So it could just be supporting a smaller cause, but making sure they do have the infrastructure to be able to report on what you're doing, excuse me, but also to have a database of people. So I think they're
And what about money, tin tax? That is that, it sounds an obvious question, but should we be filtering out necessarily people who don't offer financial support, or in fact, no, don't obsess for that so much. Of course, it's important to resource and enable.
Yeah, yeah. So you're saying if you should give money to the...
Other way around. So what if you come into alignment, spiritual alignment with an organisation, love what you're doing, go, we don't have money at the moment, we'll do these other things, and of course you would take that.
Yeah.
But it can absorb a lot of one's attention and energy to keep that relationship going, where maybe a bit of... Thank you. Sorry, I really recognise it's really reverberant. Just to backtrack, so it's almost too obvious that of course you would seek patrons that can offer financial support, but I wonder how much effort is required to cull those that don't, if at all, because they may offer other alignment, brand, all those other values, but ultimately they're going to take up some time. So maybe a mistake I've been making is indeed aligning our organisation with people who give in-kind support, but it takes up a lot of my time, and this is all done voluntarily, by the way. So my engineering life suffers for that. So it's a sharp focus for me to think, actually, should Bike Sydney engage those people, or in fact be more ruthless about who can stump up cash, because that's a very digestible sense of resourcing and capability.
Yeah.
So the question is, would you at all sort of cull, if that's not too strong a word, those patrons that don't offer financial support?
Yeah, you have to. I mean, at the end of the day, you're a business, so whatever makes business sense for you. You want to do good, and I guess that's a message of being a social purpose. You want to make sure that you're financially viable and all your decisions make business sense. So start from there and then look at your values, because if it's just your values, then you're a charity, so you have to be quite mindful. Yeah.
Cool. Any other questions?
I was just bouncing off from the previous question. When you talked about the database, were you referring to the database of the charity that you're linked up with? Is that what you meant, to get customers?
Yeah, the charity of your database. So, for instance, with Anita Roddick and the Body Shop, she was aligned to Greenpeace and another environmental organisation. So she was able to talk directly to their customers because they were quite aligned with environmental issues. So when it came time to put the petition together, the cause was able to talk about that aspect. It wasn't to, I guess, promote the brand to get sales, but it was the brand recognition. So making sure, I guess, that the cause has enough, I guess, is big enough and has the database. Yeah.
I just got a question on the structures that you put up. So you had like the corporate social responsibility, you had the social purpose, and then the not-for-profit. Is there more power given to things that are not-for-profit, or the one is like one-for-one? Or I know there's people out there with kind of like, we give 50% of profits to a certain charity, you know, they try and still need to pay their mortgage but also want to do good. Like, is there more power across the board in those structures if you're choosing one to begin, or how does that work?
I guess it goes back to making business sense for you, what you can afford. Tom's had investors. He was able to do one-for-one. So if that doesn't work for you, you can do the 50%. But there is an initiative called the 1% movement, and that was in the first slide, where you can start off as you're building your business, and you can just give 1% of your time or 1% of your profits to your cause, and then build it from there. I don't think it really matters. I guess it matters more if you're a big corporate, then you have to do bigger things. But if you're starting out, doesn't really matter as long as you're doing something.
I guess my thought train was that you're not going to get a lot of free PR if you're just giving 5% to a charity, you know, like if you're just trying to milk it for good PR, rather than saying, hey, it's in our DNA, it's 50%, maybe you're more likely to get those marketing opportunities like the Vogue magazine or whatever. I guess my question is, where's the threshold for people to say you're serious about it?
Yeah, you've got to look at it because you really care, not for a PR or marketing exercise. So if you really care about it, then you're going to talk about it. So I would encourage you to firstly find what you care about and talk about it, because that's what's going to resonate with people. Not so much the model, because that's just the marketing. It's just trying to show who you are as a person. So I would look at it from that perspective, to be honest.
Yeah, I think there used to be an old corporate governance type theory, Burl and Means it was. And I think the idea of it was that a company must be a profit maximising entity. Now, I'm not sure the current state of corporate law or anything like that, but I guess that's one extreme of corporate thinking. And then there would be some wiggle room in the other direction. So perhaps you can move down to the CSR type thing or go a little bit further to social purpose companies and maybe even down to charities if you like. But I guess for someone on the board, their main objective would be to stay out of jail. And then after that, they'd be trying to stay out of bankruptcy. And then after that, they'd be trying to avoid administration. So there's all that room for manoeuvre for corporate governance, I suppose. Now, within that spectrum, these directors might give some thought to the idea that there may be customers out there that may not like to be moralised at by directors. And they may choose to boycott companies that start wagging their fingers at them like bishops and telling them how to behave and excluding them if they're not suitably valued.
Yep. You can put some people off site if you stand up for something and your customers don't believe it. But I do want to emphasise that the market has shifted, and there's a lot of millennials coming into the market, and they do care, and they're looking for companies who are doing the right thing. And in terms of corporates who are just looking at that old business model, that doesn't work anymore. That's why some of the big brands like L'Oreal are buying the Body Shop, because they want some of that. And if you have a look at Unilever, the CEO, he's now resigned, he was a big advocate for social purpose because he saw that the social purpose brands in the Unilever portfolio performed 50% better than all the other brands. So they've purchased Ben & Jerry's, which performs, I think that performs 75% better than all the other brands, and as does Dove. So it makes financial business sense to go on this path as well, if you're just looking at straight from profit and loss.
Yeah, so David from the Roselle Neighbourhood Centre. So we've got a social mission to improve people, disadvantaged people, disabilities and homeless people. So we've got a database of different people disadvantaged. We're just thinking how to partner with groups like the Smith family that you've worked with. What are they looking for in a partner?
A lot of money. The Smith family is quite big, and I have worked with the Smith family. They have a lot of major corporate partners, and I guess they're the Macquarie Bank of Charities, if you want to call them that. So they have a lot of programs, and they do ask for funding, and they do value their logo. So to work with someone like that, you do have to pay quite a lot. And the money does go for good, I do know that. But they do have a lot of big corporates, so maybe they're not one that you look at.
My second question is, we're moving towards a social enterprise model where you're trying to something that's viable and then bring that money back to help the community that we're involved in. Have you got experience in that area, social enterprise, like one-on-one?
Yeah, so what was your question in particular?
If you have experience in one social enterprise projects that you've worked on, and some tips on that.
From a PR perspective, promoting them, I have, and I do have some insights in how they work, but I'm happy to share that offline if you want more information. Yeah.
Any final questions?
Yeah, I'm Davinia from Energy for Impact. When you were speaking about aligning the organisation with a purpose and choosing a charity, you often see companies that partner with, say, like 3 to 5 charities. I just wondered what your thoughts were. You know, does your message get lost when you partner with, say, 3 versus 1?
Yeah, that's a good question. I usually work with a lot of corporates that partner with a few causes. So we usually go in and help them find the one. It's got to be aligned to your values, and if you're looking for a social purpose, usually that's one. You want to address one problem, so you want to make sure that you are aligned with that one key cause. You can support other causes if you like, but you need to have that hero cause. So with the clients I work with, it's always helping them find that one social purpose and that one major cause that they partner with long term. So I always encourage that.
Fantastic. Thanks everyone for coming today, and let's give Dora another round of applause.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dora.